here I wanted to talk about this AI that I created for this levels versus clone game that I made. So, um, if you don't know the game levels versus, what it is so you have these 25 panels, and then you can move one at a time according to certain rules. So, um, you can think of it as the blue panels are your warriors. They can defeat the red enemies, or they can pick up the yellow money, and then you can combine yellow or blue panels of the same number to create a panel that's one larger. And so if you build up your money like it's doing right now, then you get a lot more points when you collect it with a warrior. But your warrior has to be strong enough to be able to pick it up, so it has to be the same or larger number. And then you also need strong warriors to be able to defeat the enemies as they level up. And specific to the versus version, you know what color panel is going to appear based on the action you do. So if you defeat an enemy, then a yellow money will appear in the empty spot. And if you combine money, then a blue warrior will appear in the empty spot. And anything else you do will cause an enemy to appear. So so that's roughly how the game works. And then the basic strategy is that you try and build up your warriors and your money, and try to and so you try to build up the money pretty much so that you get really large amounts of money, and then not collect it. And then as you build up the money, then when you connect it, you get even stronger warriors to appear. So then you can get to higher levels faster. And then if you keep not collecting the money and keep building up, then you'll get even higher levels faster so that you can continue defeating the enemies. And then when you eventually do connect or collect the money at the end, you'll get a really large score because it's kind of like exponential. Um, so as the money value increases, the amount of points you get. So for the AI, I made an algorithmic AI. So um, basically, what I did was I just had an idea of if you do these certain things and if you think about these certain things, then you can probably have a complete strategy that works overall. And the way I broke it down was that I said, like, I wanted to break it down into three phases. So the first phase would be defeating enemies, the second phase would be building up money, and the third phase would be building up warriors. So it decides what phase to do based on um, the number of each panel that's on the board at the current time. So based on that, it decides, like, okay, I think now I should be trying to defeat enemies, and then so that's what it's doing now, and then it's going to be connecting the money and building up the money, and then after that, it's going to build up the warriors. So that's roughly the idea behind the AI. And in order to do that, though, there were a lot of different things that I had to um, take into account for and figure out how to do, like just figuring out. So even if you know what you want to do is connect the money, well, you still have to figure out how to do that. So um, it looks at connected groups like this connected group, and then it tries to look at the moves and say, if I do this move, or if I do this sequence of moves, does it still, how many different groups does it break down a certain color into? So here you could look at this as one group because it's possible to combine all of these numbers in this corner into one, which I think it will do now. So I'd look at that as one group, but here it's kind of like four different groups because there's four different separate blue panels. So it tries to see how each sequence of moves would create or how many groups would be created based on whatever moves you do, and then if and then it's looking for the sequence of moves that minimizes the number of different groups. So that's how it works. And it does that for when it has to combine the yellow or the blue panels. So, and then there's some tricks involved in trying to figure out um, how many groups there are, because even if things are touching, it may not be possible to connect them. Like if you have a 1 and then a 2 and then a 1, well, if it's separated like that, you can't connect any of them. So even though if they were if it's like 1 1 2, you could connect them all into a 3 panel. If it's 1 2 1, you can't connect any of them, and it's just 3 separate groups. So in order to account for that, what I did was I would go along the path and then keep track of what the sums are. So you can say like, well, this could build up to a 2 panel or a 3 panel. So if the next panel is a 3, we can connect to it and it still can be seen as one group. But if we can't do that, then we have to look at it as a separate group. So I also wanted to talk about algorithmic AI in general and some of the benefits and some of the complexities of it. So I think there's a lot of potential for it, and one of the things that I like about it is the amount of control that you can have. So I know exactly what I did, and I know why I did it, and I can kind of determine for myself if I think it was a good idea or a bad idea. And if I wanted to change something about how it behaves, then I could just write something different. I could just make the change because I know what I coded it to do. But it's in some ways, so you have more control in that sense, but it's really difficult to do. And that's something that I don't know if people necessarily appreciate is that it's very difficult because even though all the things I said are relatively simple, it's overall very tough to do because so one of the problems is that it does exactly what you tell it to do, which sounds like a good thing, but it's kind of like the so if you know the monkey's paw or any type of cursed wish where you get what you wish for, but it doesn't necessarily work out how you wanted it to work out, or it does something bad. That's how this feels, where if you're not really precise or really sharp, and if you don't know all the different things that you have to be aware of or make adjustments for, well, it's going to do exactly what you said you wanted it to do, but it may not be a good result. It may not work out. Like if you missed one situation or you forgot about one thing or didn't account for some certain aspect, well, it's going to keep not accounting for that aspect over and over and over every time it makes a decision, and it's just always going to get it wrong, and that may make everything fail. So there's a lot of difficulty related to that. And then it also has a whole bunch of complexity. So if you're not really good with that type of complexity, it's going to be really tough as well because um, so naturally with any kind of coding you do, you're going to have your bugs where you just mess something up. Maybe you put a plus sign instead of a minus sign. If you don't do coding, it's kind of like a typo with typing, but more complicated. And because it's more complicated, it occurs a lot more frequently. So it's kind of like that though. And then you could make any kind of problem like that, but you could also have logic errors with what you wanted it to do. So it may actually be doing what you want it to do, but what you wanted it to do wasn't actually good enough, and so it doesn't actually work. So so you have to be really good at analyzing that, because if if you can't figure out like debugging by itself is already a pretty difficult thing to do. Like here, the AI is kind of messing it up, and that's not a bug. It's due to how the decisions I made it make. So it's kind of getting stuck, and it's not combining money anymore. But that's not a bug, and I know it's not a bug, and that's because I know enough about how to analyze it. But if you didn't know, you might think, it's a bug, and you might have put a plus sign somewhere or a minus sign somewhere or done some calculation wrong, and then you're going to have to investigate everything. So again, this isn't a bug, this is the idea not actually working in this scenario. And it's something I know about, but it's pretty tough to fix. Because again, this stuff is pretty hard. It's hard to do it this way. But so like I was saying, if you aren't good at analyzing, you're going to see things like this that look like bugs, but they aren't bugs. They're just problems with your idea. So you have to be able to figure out, is like is it a bug, or is it a problem with the idea, or is it some combination of both, or anything like that? And it gets really complicated really quickly. But there is a reason though why I believe in algorithmic AI, and so again, part of it is because of the control you have and you know what it's doing, but I also feel like it might be possible to essentially create an algorithmic AI for how people reason, so how people do reasoning and figure out patterns like that. So instead of me coding the actual pattern and the actual thing that I want it to go for and the thing I want to look at, I would try and make it be something where I would want to code so that it can reason out what it should do on its own. And it's something that would be really difficult, but it's something that I think is possible, and I don't think that's how people are doing it right now. But I think it has a lot of potential if you do things that way. So that's kind of beyond the scope of this video, though. This is just a levels AI, levels versus AI that I made. Again, as you've seen, it has some flaws to it that I know about, and I think I could do better, but this I was just kind of trying to code up pretty quickly and just see what I could get working in a short amount of time. So I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It pretty much reached the goal I was going for, but there's a lot of improvements that I would like to go for with it. I just don't know if I will. But overall, like, it has its flaws, but it still works pretty well, and it's not too bad. And I'll let it play out to the end of this round. It's about to get stuck here, and then that'll be the end. And that's it. There's no game over screen, but